So we're asking people, instead of this being, these guys said this and those guys, for this to be very organic, for people to really come, and there are people here who I know have feelings that want to express them, and we would appreciate it if everybody came and, you know, with 2-3 minutes, try to express what it is that you feel at this point in time, because there's so much going on with Juneteenth, with, you know, police oppression, the killing of black folks, so forth and so on. There's a lot of calls being made, and all of them are legitimate calls, to be, as a matter of fact. How many people here are part of the Mandarin school program? Anybody else here besides you?
We're not even in it.
So anybody that have kids that want to learn Mandarin, if you live in this area, you can get that done. And if you see the way the world is running, it's a good thing for them to learn. French is gone, Russian is gone, you got to learn Mandarin. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you for taking the time to take the stand. I'm going to have my brother from Local 810, Michael Smith, Nelson Silva. I don't know if either one want to speak first. Michael is the principal officer of Local 810. That picture that you see on the right is Local 810's delegation to the March on Washington in 1963. And I was telling some people before that back at that time, the Teamsters like to take credit for things that sometimes other people did independently of them. And I'm giving them a little credit. But at the time, when you hear Teamsters were involved in the civil rights movement, it basically was 810, 210, my sister is from 210 over here, Local 875, and Local 743 in Chicago. The first three that I mentioned were Jewish-led locals. They were run by Jewish people and so forth and so on. Local 873 was predominantly a black local that was led by an Italian brother who had the foresight and the wisdom to know that times were changing and doors had to be opened and things had to happen, and we take our hat off to Don Peters for his vision. So without being further ado, I'd like to invite my brother to say a couple of words, and I'm going to ask each and every one of you that want to speak to come up and give a short sense of what it is that you're feeling in this moment in time. It'd be like a time capsule thing, you know? Michael?
Hey everybody, my name is Mike Smith, president of Local 810. This is my brother Nelson Silver, my best friend and my vice president. I wrote down a few words simply because Nelson and I speak from our heart, and it's a beautiful Friday, and we wanted to let you guys get out of here at some point. So I just wanted to put down a few words to make sure you understood the picture behind you and what Chris has us out here for today. In August of 1963, hundreds of thousands of Americans marched together to advocate civil and economic rights for African Americans. This is where Martin Luther King stood in front of Lincoln Memorial and delivered his historic I Have the Dream speech, which he called for an end to racism. The march was one of the largest political rallies for human rights in the United States of America. This march was a statement, and this statement was that Black Lives Matter. Again, my name is Mike Smith, and I'm from Local 810 Teamsters in New York City. I stand here proud to let you know that my union was part of that March on Washington, an alliance of civil rights, religious organizations, and unions came together with a banner that read, "Jobs and freedom for all." Busloads of Americans, Local 810 members, and representatives drove down to Washington to support civil rights and show that New York City stands alongside that fight for freedom. This banner, which stands at the entrance of our local, shows our brothers and sister union members holding picket signs that read, "Teamsters, the world's largest union, demand equality for all." Unions have had a big role in advancing civil liberties, social justice, and economic equality for all Americans. We've proudly supported and fought for anti-discrimination and civil rights legislation, marriage equality, and protection for undocumented workers. So when my union brother from 808, Chris, asked me to join him here today, there was nothing that was going to stop Nelson and I from being here. I'll end off with this. It was 155 years ago today that the Union soldiers landed in Galveston, Texas with news that the war had ended and that the enslaved were now free. It is an honor to be with all of you today on Juneteenth to let you know that New York City's Union soldiers proudly stand behind this movement. Black lives mattered then, Black lives matter now, and Black lives will matter forever. Thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you.
You know, we chose Grant's tomb because Grant was the general that led and defeated that lunatic Robert E. Lee, the West Point wise guy. So we chose Grant's tomb. In fact, his presidency was one of progress and really, besides corruption, but in terms of the people, he was a very progressive person in terms of protecting what was then called Reconstruction and trying to keep things going for people of African descent. Now I invite people from the community who wants to come and say, tell me something that's on your mind. You're talking about defund the police. Come and speak on it, my brother. When you talk about investing in youth and communities, give them your name, your affiliations.
My name is Herb Michael. I live at Morningside Cooperative. I've worked in schools in the neighborhood, and I went to City College.
All right.
In 1964, a young man named Thomas Powell was murdered just a few blocks from here and started what the newspapers called a riot. But what it amounted to was a rebellion against the oppressive and racist police in Harlem. I remember hearing about that even though I was a young man because my father worked at the butcher shop that used to be under the tracks here.
Metro-North tracks over there.
Yeah. And he was pretty shaken by it. Yeah, he couldn't quite understand what he felt people were being angry at him. But what we see today, I also lived in Teaneck, New Jersey, where a young man was killed. A young man named Pinnell was killed. So the point is, there's nothing new about racist police killing. Happens all the time, but it seems to me that something shifted in this country, and I'm very pleased to have lived to this point where I see tens of thousands of people marching for Black Lives, arguing that Black Lives Matter and that there needs to be more social and economic equality, and it's really breathtaking, and it shows that some changes take decades and some changes take just one night. And the night that young man in Minneapolis was murdered was the night that changed almost everything. And you see Black, Latin, Asian, and white people throughout the country demanding social justice, fighting racism, and social and economic equality. So I'm pretty proud to be here and speaking. Thank you.
Anybody else want to come up and express some thoughts? Don't get shy now. You do it on YouTube and Facebook. Just see it. Come on. Okay.
I was a union member, and I still am, and I want to know if the police unions are being pressured by our unions, because they have been allowing this to happen and protecting violent police over and over again.
Right. That is true. So the police are not a union. They're an association, a benevolent association. And it is right that the unions tend to be very protective. I think there's a certain element of fear. I think there's a certain element of somewhat of a class collaboration, if you will, in that sense. But I'll say this, because a lot of times we just think of them because we see these videos. But if you go on Google Bloody Thursday, Bloody Friday, the Toledo, Ohio auto strike, you will find out that the police represents the state in protecting the propertied class. And when they finish killing all the black folks, that system is going to require another victim. It's going to be Jewish, it's going to be Irish, it's going to be Italian, it's going to be Latino, it's going to be gay and lesbians, But racism, sexism requires a victim. And so this struggle is to defeat these isms that keep dividing the working class from going and getting their money from out of Jeff Bezos' bank account and tax the rest of whatever we left him with. So I'm still asking people, because we want this to be something where the community spoke, people spoke from their heart. Does anybody feel anything from their heart that they want to come out and say a word? Something, anything. Come on, man. Speak up.
Thank you.
All right.
I don't want to take up too much time, but I think today's like a day of celebration, but also I think a time for especially non-black people of color and white allies to see that we have a lot of work to do. And I think that starts with, we need to abolish the police. I think it's proven to be a racist institution. It's proven that it has systemic issues, that we can't keep claiming reforms. We can't keep claiming that it's something fixable, because it's not. And I think we all have to work towards that, and that comes for prisons too. We see time and time again who that affects and who that targets, these systems. And we know that when this crime that they're so afraid of, that they're going to call us radical for, comes from a lack of education, right? Like that sign says, from a lack of funding for actual programs that help our children and help people be successful, what white people have been getting for forever in this country. So I think there's a lot of work to do. I'm Fuad, by the way. I'm Palestinian, and there's Palestinian solidarity for black liberation and black power.
All right. Palestinian lives matter.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So we can see the global context of the oppression of this ruling elite that goes around the world and just pillage, just taking and taking and sucking and sucking. And if you look around, I mean, if you just think about it, 2 years ago, the Trumpster gave them like $1 trillion tax cut. Here comes coronavirus and they're all broke again. Are you for real? Something is wrong, because this is money. When we're not taxing these people, there's money that's not going into the school system. We shouldn't have schools that were built in 1945. They need to tear these schools down and build modern schools that teach a different way, in which there are 10, 12 kids per classroom. No teacher should be straddled with 40 and 50 strangers. Really, I mean, you know, they just come in and they go out. So it becomes like a warehouse where you're just performing this thing, but you're really not trying to engage them to really be educated, to really understand what it is that this world means for them. So we, and this little moment of agitation, we have to continue this agitation. We have to create the pearls of the world. It is up to us. And I'm inviting anyone to come up, say a couple of words. Come, my sister from California. This is my sister, Saval. Saval came all the way from California to be here from Teamsters Local 1932. My sister, go ahead.
I want to piggyback on what Chris was just saying. First of all, protesting is good. It makes your voice get heard. It lets people know that we're not taking this anymore. We're tired of being sick and tired. But first and foremost, we have to vote. And if you don't go out there and vote to make a change, just like the president we have in the office now, he did not win by popular vote. He won because we don't vote. So first of all, we need to educate. Let our kids know, our millennials know, everyone know that you have to vote to make a change. You can protest to let people know and get awareness, but you have to vote to get things changed. So you need to be going to your city council meetings, knowing who your congressmen are, knowing who your mayors are. Get active in your community so you can change the world around you, what in turn will change everything else too. So again, I'm Chevelle, I'm from California, but just keep it going. And like I said, get into your schools and educate. It's very important.
Somebody come and talk to me. Talk to me about, come on, my sister. Good afternoon, how are you?
Good.
All right.
My name is Reem, and I just want to say that my belief is in the new generation. I think a lot of us, people of color, especially in my generation, we always compromise. We always believe that we can try to make it work within the system by speaking up. But they're teaching us that no, it should be abolishing the system, starting from scratch. And I believe in them, and we should follow them and not be the ones in charge. We should give the new generation to be in charge and for them to actually set the rules of how we're going to move forward.
Absolutely. Now you see what I'm talking about? It has always been the youth that have led the change. Dr. Martin Luther King died, he was 30-something years old. Congressman Lewis was 30-something years old when he was, he was a teenager when he was getting his head bashed in crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge. It was the youth that stopped the Vietnam War. So we have to, and I think you're 100% correct, we have to follow the youth. We have did our time. I would dare to say we might have failed in our time. So now we have to support and give the youth the reins and let them lead the future and let them claim tomorrow, because tomorrow belongs to them. Again, I call out somebody who feels something. I know you feel something. All of you on Facebook and Instagram and carrying on. You can't all be about the next meal you just had, so you had to feel something. Everybody, come on, my sister, can you say something? I know you got energy. Come on. Come on, I feel the energy. Come on. Don't be shy. Today's not the day to be shy. Today is the day to tell it. We want the world to understand this police force, and I tell people, they think, oh, they've all been just beating up on black people. That little wagon they ride around with didn't get the name paddy wagon for nothing. They weren't putting black people in there calling it a paddy wagon. Trust me. So the race, that's what I meant by the system requires a victim. Who will that victim be? It can be Puerto Rican. There's a book called How the Irish Became White that people ought to read. You know, there was lynching of Italians in the South predominantly. Some because of their consciousness, some because of their color, some just because they were foreigners, right? So we live in a system that requires this division of the working class. So what we're doing here as labor is we're trying to unite the working class under one banner. You know, that people start to not say, oh, I don't see color. Well, if you don't see color, then you must be blind, or colorblind at the very least. The thing is to be able to see it, feel it, not be afraid of it, and just see them as, you know, when the lion is going through the jungle and he sees the cheetah, he doesn't go, I don't see spots. He knows who that is. That's a leopard over there. That's a cheetah over there. So this idea that we're not seeing each other, we need to see each other. We need to embrace each other. We need to identify with each other's ethnic differences, the food, the culture, the language. We need to begin to understand each other. That comes from communication. That comes from simply saying hello. As you walk in the street, hello, how are you? Have a nice day. We have to embrace a new tomorrow. And the youth are doing that, and we can see that in these marches. Again, I open the floor for people to come up and say a couple of words. Come on there, young man. I know you feel something. You've been around like me. You said a thing or two. All right.
Thank you all for caring enough about yourselves for being here today and expressing yourself as an individual, as a community, as an American. Okay? I got three things against me. I'm old, I'm gay, and I'm a Jew. But you know what? I'm a frickin' American.
That's right.
And it's about standing up for our individual rights, and it's about respecting each other's viewpoints. You don't have to agree necessarily, but respect each other for having an idea, having a thought. I promise you, if I cut myself, the color of my blood would be the same color of every one of you here.
That's right.
Isn't that common sense?
That's right. That's right.
I got a lot of reasons for you to hate me. Not one of them has to do with I'm a senior. Not one of them has to do with I'm gay. And not one of them has to do with being a Jew. I can give you plenty of reasons. So if you're going to hate me, be specific. Don't put me in a freaking category.
That's all right.
Okay?
That's right.
And I think it's great that we're here being able to express ourselves.
Yes. Thank you.
And as far as the police are concerned, I have a nephew who's a New York police officer. I do believe that the police has to be under community authority.
That's right.
Each
Just like the
community
military.
has to have a say, and the basic tenets have to be changed. If I jaywalk, I shouldn't be shot, no matter whether I'm old or gay or a Jew.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
So anyway, you all give me hope that the best is still yet to come for the United States of America. Thank you all.
Thank you. So you see, each one of us today brought hope to everyone else here. Anybody else? Come and say something. You want to advertise? But the military is theoretically under civilian control. It's not really true, but kind of. We need to bring the police department under civilian control. That commissioner should never be a policeman that climbed up through the ranks, because he's tainted from day one. Because the so-called good cop, if he went in and spoke about something that he saw, you remember the movie? You remember Serpico? Serpico had to go in hiding. Might still be in hiding. And all he did was bring out the corruption that was in the police department. So that wall of blue has to be torn down. It has to be demolished. It has to be left dust, and then have somebody come in a vacuum cleaner and get the dust out of there, lest it choke your lungs. But my sister.
Thank you, sir. Hi, I'm very happy to be here. Glad to see you all here. I'm a neighbor from Claremont Avenue, and I just wanted to offer one neighborly perspective of a slightly more, I guess, radical angle that I've been thinking about, and that's just that what I've seen in the past week alone has made it very clear to me that reform and community control of the police is not sufficient to achieve the ends we need. We need to start with defunding, and we may need abolition is on the table. No longer a radical idea, a very simple, common sense one. And that's what our brothers and sisters on the internet and at protests all over the country have been showing us for the past couple weeks. So I just wanted to share my very ordinary down-the-block perspective on this, which is that we don't need the police. In fact, we need maybe no police. And I say this as a, I'm trying to think of which relevant identities here. I grew up in this neighborhood. I've been policed all my life. And Mona's growing up here too, that's right. And I'm a white person, obviously, but I've been policed and not helped in any way that I'm aware of, and not in any way that I welcome. And to the contrary, my tax dollars have gone to systems that brutalize my neighbors. And that's why I think it's time to stop that. And so that's why I'm joining the many and the more and more every day who are calling for the defunding of police and the abolition of police. And I don't want to, do it by halves. I say it's really time. And I say this as a very, cautious, pragmatic person. I think this is the most cautious, life-affirming, and pragmatic set of policies we could possibly embrace as a society at this point in time. So thank you for listening, and thank you for being here.
So we celebrate Juneteenth. We celebrate these young folks. Because I don't disagree. I don't know if we need 60,000 cops, but maybe one or two. But certainly $6 billion a year is a lot of money, and you're really telling the story of what it is you're trying to accomplish. So they have targets. How many tickets they got to give out? How many arrests they got to make? Well, if you're not arresting white kids, then you got to double up on black and brown kids to make your quota. So the system is not looking for criminals. The system is looking for statistics. And invariably, the statistics victimize the poor. And I say that because if you get outside of New York and go to North Dakota where there are only 3 blacks and a polar bear, they hunt somebody else, poor whites. Native Americans become victimized by this system. So we have a collective duty to change fundamental the foundational change, no more reform. We don't need reform. We need structural change. We need people to start making money. The working class today is maybe 30% behind in their wages. If you compare them to the growth of the ruling class's money, what Warren Buffett and Bezos and them have made just since the calamity of COVID-19. You see, none of us got that money. They begrudge us unemployment when they know that the majority of the people are not going back to work. Of this 40 million people that's unemployed, I'll bet you there are 15 million, it'll be years. And the head of the Federal Reserve has spoken on that, and they keep a tab on what's going on. So if we don't step up, so this is beyond just defund this, change that, we also have to demand our share of the wealth that have been developed in this country over the past 15 or 20, 30, 40, 50 years. As a matter of fact, we could take it back to day one because they've been robbing people of their money from day one. If you were a free man in Georgia and you're a carpenter, there's a strong possibility that you worked alongside enslaved Africans doing the same work, exactly the same work, just as good as you. And when you went into the boss and said, boss, it's been 10 years, I ain't got a raise, can I get another 25 cents? The boss turns to them and says, listen, I can replace you with them. Get out of my office. And they walk out. Not mad at the boss who controls the system, but mad at the enslaved Africans who have no control of their condition. And we live this life when we talk about the immigrants. No immigrant came here, walked up to the boss and said, yo, you got to get rid of these 10 guys. I just came up from Tijuana and I'm taking this job. Never happened. But they knew they could exploit that. So if slavery was heroin, then undocumented workers are methadone to the system, but the system is still a junkie to exploitation of the working class, and we have to end this exploitation, and it's up to all of us. This young lady right here, these young kids, they'll never have a pension like we got. They'll never know what it is. They'll be happy with a 401k that rocks and rolls with the stock market, not having some firm outcome after putting in 30 and 40 years into the system. So when we talk about justice, justice is broader. Justice is a very humongous lift that we have to lift to gain real justice. Now, there's a gentleman named Brian Stevenson, and if you ever get to Montgomery after COVID-19, should take a trip to the Legacy Museum or go up to the monument on lynching in Montgomery, Alabama. But there's a t-shirt, and the t-shirt says that the opposite of poverty is not wealth. The opposite of poverty is justice. Because if you have justice, you can gain wealth. You can gain a living. But without justice, you will be forever beaten down and exploited. And I call on the community to come out. We want this to be organic. We want people to speak their minds. Let me hear some young people. Young lady back there, come on up here. Tell me what you're feeling. I know you're feeling something. Nothing? I know you are. Somebody come. I see you. Come and say something. I got you right here. Don't step back now. You're in the Amalgamated Union. You've been around a long time. You done seen a thing or two. And you come from a very active union. Come and say a word or two. Shyness is what counts. You think you're shy, I'm shy. I just have to do this because I got no choice. Nobody else will, right? We call on anybody. Anybody want to say a word or two? One thing, two things? I don't want to keep you here all night because I could go all night, but I want to do that. Come, my sister. You don't want me to start talking.
Hi, I think it's also really important that we keep the media accountable for how they're reporting and the way that there's still protests going on all around the country, but now that they're peaceful, there hasn't been as much as when there were riots. So the New York Times, they're just completely erasing it, and it shows how they're continuing to vilify black bodies when it's riots, but then when there's protests, they're not giving it the same attention. And in another way I've noticed this is also with the death of 18-year-old Zakia Crawford, who was shot to death in Akron, Ohio, and it was an incredibly tragic death. She was 18 years old. She just graduated from high school. She was on her way to Central State University. And the New York Times has not covered her death at all. CNN has one article. In comparison, there was a girl who tragically was killed from my college back in December. Her name was Tessa Majors, and it was also incredibly tragic. She was also 18 years old, a promising student, and literally the 3 hours after she died, the New York Times reported it. They were swarming our campus the next day, and it just shows how, you know, there's still a lack of sympathy for black people as victims, and it contributes to the dehumanization when you only show the rioting and not the peaceful protest, when you only show the perpetrators and not the victims.
Thank you. See, that's why you got to come out, because she brought out some information y'all didn't know nothing about. But it is right. So when you have these peaceful protests, nobody cares. Burn down one building and everybody's at your doorstep trying to figure out what you're doing. So the system says we only answer to violence. We were born in violence. You think about the history of this country. This country was born of every major move came as a result of violence. They were crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge peacefully. That wasn't good enough. They had to be attacked violently. Change the world. This is what happens. You kill Dr. Martin Luther King, change the world. So this country is kind of a junkie to violent actions. And so if you do it peacefully as the Constitution calls for, it's almost like ignoramuses, they can't get it. So it forces us to do something else. And there are those people that do that. So don't condemn them for doing it. Because Dr. King said, a riot is the language of the unheard. They couldn't hear. They didn't hear with Eric Gardner. They didn't hear with Breonna Taylor. They didn't hear with my sister down in Houston, Sandra Bland. They couldn't hear. They couldn't hear Walter Scott. They couldn't hear Philando Castillo. They couldn't hear. But then, when you get loud enough, see my sister, she was at that Legacy Museum I'm telling you about. Love your t-shirt, my sister. She was at the Legacy Museum, or she knows somebody that went there. This is a phenomenal place you have got to go and see. On your way to New Orleans, drive, stop in Montgomery, and go and see this museum. It is phenomenal. We're looking for another speaker. Come and talk to them about the Legacy Museum. Come and say a couple of words about what you're experiencing today. Come on up here and talk to them. Talk to them. 30 seconds.
I'm not a speaker.
Somebody else. Who wants to speak? Come on, sister. All right.
First, can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't know, I can't count the number of rallies, demonstrations, marches, etc. I've been part of over the decades of my life. And yet it seemed like each time we're responding to the same thing. It keeps happening, we march, we protest, we go home. What feels somewhat different about this one is I'm hearing more, okay, we've marched, we've rallied, we've protested, and now we will follow that out. And that, I think, is the crucial difference. Many people have been doing it in pockets. We have more people ready to think together. What kind of community programs can we offer our young people so that they grow up feeling safe and strong and able to work together and support each other? So I'm hoping that after all this, the next step is, let's do something.
All right. Beautiful. She was really echoing what Saval was echoing, which is the idea that after protest comes real work, which is at the ballot box. We got to stop electing people because they're black. We got to stop electing people because they look like us. And we got to start asking, what have you been doing in D.C. for 15 years? Just look around, they do nothing. They shouldn't be happening. So people have to start to exercise the thought process, not vote Democrat, not vote Republican, but start to vote on issues. Make them tell you what it is that they're believing, what it is they intend to accomplish, and how they intend to make that work. And when they do that, then you can start to vote for people. But people get into this thing of, oh, they're Democrats, so they must be good. They're horrible. The Republicans are horrible. Let me tell you something, just to show you how this ruling class works. Republicans used to be known as the party of Lincoln. Ulysses S. Grant ran as president of the United States and went as a Republican. When Lyndon Baines Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act, all them Democrats left the Democratic Party and moved over to the Republican Party and took it over. So you see, they don't care what the name of the party is, they have an outcome. So the Democratic Party used to be known years ago as the party of the Klan. If you went through the South, almost every town, every city was run by the Democratic Party. And they upheld the ideas of racism and divisionism. So don't get caught up with these little labels. People need to go home and start to read the documents. What are they saying to you? What do they mean? Because nobody comes up and says, I'm going to rob you. They come up to you very nicely, and then they rob you. You know, and for some of you young ladies that have dated in lifetime, you know what I'm talking about how that goes. So we have to change the world, and the world is being changed, and we have to keep pushing, but we can't lead it anymore. We have to allow the youth to take the lead. We have to be in that supportive realm. For those of us that are old enough, been around long enough, we have a couple of resources, we have a couple of dollars, and if they need those dollars to help move their energy and to move their issues, we have to help them. Don't try to lead, don't try to tell them anything, because when we were young, old folk couldn't tell us a damn thing. So no need to think that they're going to be listening to us. Again, from the community, from labor, I'm calling you. Anybody wants to come up and say a couple of words, because I haven't ate since 8 o'clock this morning. I'm getting hungry. So if we're not going to say no more, then we need to say goodbye to Jeb and all his kids. Anybody want to speak? Anybody want to talk about Black Lives Matter? My sister, come on and say a word or two. Yeah, come on. Come on, this is the stage right here. You can't sing from the audience. You never seen Mick Jagger singing down there. He was always up here.
I think what I would say is that somebody was saying to me today that in the 60s there were all sorts of things going on, and there was some concern that black people wanted it to be their voice being heard, and that maybe white people shouldn't be joining into it. And I said, this is very different than that. This is, yes, black people want to be heard, but they want white people to acknowledge and to learn and to understand what's going on. And finally, I think we're getting it. So I think that's why we are all participating. Yeah.
All right. Everybody has a right to be heard. And any movement that doesn't embrace support from other movements is bound to be defeated. So we have to be a part of a collective. It's not going to be just them. It's going to be gays. It's going to be LGBT. It's going to be blacks. It's going to be Latinos. It's going to be Asians. It's going to be all different things. We're not always going to agree on everything. That's why we have democracy. We discuss, we debate. And at some point, somebody rings a bell and says what it is that we can agree to, and whatever that is, that's what we do. And we go back and we debate again. But we don't just block up and say we're not going to talk to each other like they're doing in Congress. And you have the right to vote every one of them rascals out who continue to play a game. Don't think they lose it. All these congressmen and senators become multimillionaires. They walk in broke, come out multimillionaires. You know what I'm saying? Mitch McConnell, his wife, is a Chinese woman that's married to one of the richest men in all of China. You don't think he got there without Xi's approval. He didn't get there just because he was smart. So we have to understand that there's an interconnectivity of the world. Malcolm X said that the final confrontation was going to be between the oppressed and the oppressor, not between black and white. And that's what we're living out today. We have to fight the oppressor, and this system is oppressive. And we have to fight, because if your rent ain't 30% behind, your mortgage ain't 30% behind, food in the supermarket ain't 30% behind, but your paycheck is. Look at the people, and when you go to Amazon and you want your stuff same day, you make that workplace oppressive. You got to start going back and buying stuff, because everything that's in Amazon is available at some store that will ship it to you. I stopped buying books on Amazon. You got to stop. I'm not going to say you're going to stop everything, but if you cut that sucker by 25%, he'll feel it. He'll feel it. If you boycotted it for 1 week and says, I ain't buying nothing, they'll feel it. You got to get out of these big Chase Manhattan Bank and all these banks that's invested in, these massive pipelines that's moving oil all over the world. And it's 2021. Oil is ancient. We need to be talking about these solar power, electric cars, so forth and so on. They have the technology. They don't need to leave us with these things. They need to move this process forward. Don't spend $30 billion to build something underground. Just build a trolley track. We just want to get from here to there. We don't need to go downstairs. We could go, you could put a trolley track right here. One going downtown, next block over, you're coming back uptown. Get people out of these cars, but you have to create the system. But if you're spending $6 billion on the police force, it's hard to do that. If you're spending billions and billions of dollars on prisons, it's hard to do that. So at some point, if you give people jobs, if you pay them well, you'd be surprised how crime just has a way of, they ain't gonna disappear. Some of them are just born criminals, don't get me wrong. But a lot of people commit crime not because they are criminals, but because they have to survive, right? So since I can't get a job at UPS, I gotta hustle and sell drugs. I didn't really want to do this, but the system gave me no choice, right? So we have to change the system that says everybody should have a job and everybody should have a living wage. And people say $15 an hour. $15 an hour is not a living wage in New York. $15 an hour is, if you live in New York City, if you ain't making $50 an hour, that should be the minimum wage, should be like $40 an hour, truth be told, if you want to live in New York City.
And everybody should have health care.
And everybody should have health care and a pension. Not a 401k, but everybody should have health care and a pension. We don't need another submarine. We don't need to blow up the world 10 times. There's only one world. How many times you gonna blow it up? We need to stop. I call on anybody from the community. My sister Gail, come and tell them about your school. This is my sister, Dr. Gail Foster. A brilliant mind, if I might say so myself. I gotta hug you, man. Damn Corona. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm so glad to be here. You know, this brother and Local 808 has been supporting liberation for black people, Black Lives Matter, for decades. I started a program to save black boys from the public school system. That's right, the special ed system. They were going from special ed to prison. I did my research, did my doctorate at Teachers College. Special ed, juvenile detention, prison. I even worked in juvenile detention, and I was starting a scholarship to take them out of public school special ed programs in second grade and put them in black independent schools, because at that time there was black people only understood that we were losing our black males. Black women, black families, black people understood it. So the only place they were safe were black independent schools. And they took them and they nurtured them and they worked with them. And Chris used to raise money every year from the Teamsters to support our schools. They used to support all kinds of causes. He got them to support our schools. Now I want to say something. This day today, to me,
is about 40 acres and a mule. It's about what happened when black people got their emancipation. Because, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to turn this off. Maybe you can turn this off for me. I was listening. There's a piece on WNYC, 40 Acres and a Mule. And the reality is that after slavery, black people ask, well, what do you want now? They said, just give us some land and leave us alone. That's all. Give us some land to farm and leave us alone. We can do it. We can take care of ourselves. And that was promised to them at the end of the Civil War, 40 acres and a mule. But what happened is after President Lincoln got assassinated, Andrew Johnson reneged. He took that back. He said, absolutely not. And he took it back. And so those black people who had worked that, who were expecting a way to make it, how are you going to make it? You don't own anything. It was against the law for you to own anything. How are you going to make it? How are you going to take care of your family? They were told that they had to go back and work. The land was given, instead of to the black people, to the slave owners. It was given back to the slave owners, the ones who had fought the Civil War against their country. It was given back to them, and black people had to go work on that land, not in regular paying jobs, but as sharecroppers. And sharecroppers is a system of feudalism. And what it does is it says, we'll give you money for milk and flour and corn for your kids. Then you work the land, and at the end of the year, we'll see if we owe you anything. And of course, at the end of every year, they were always in debt. And now the justice system came in to keep them. Anybody in their right mind would say, this is a bad deal, let me get out of this. But the justice system, the criminal justice system and the civil justice system would not let them leave the land. It conspired with those landowners, those former slave owners, to keep them on the land, working in servitude, always in debt, always in debt. And when they ran away or tried to escape, they faced criminal justice. Sometimes they wound up on chain gangs. You all know the song Chain Gang. Who was it again? Who's the guy? What's his name? Working on the chain gang. That's a protest song about black people being captured by the criminal justice system on any kind, the same kind of offenses, like sleeping in your car at Wendy's, like having a $20 counterfeit bill, like selling loose cigarettes, being captured for that kind of stuff, or just because somebody said at Central Park, this black man is threatening me. Arrest and put you on chain gangs. Well, chain gangs were free labor. Free labor.
That's right.
Okay? So this criminal justice system and this civil justice system have been conspiring for centuries. This economic system has been conspiring for centuries. And when black people could escape and came north, that's why they came north, because in the north, supposedly they could get a real live job. Well, then they faced the discrimination up here in the north, whether it was housing discrimination or whatever it was. So I'm going to say something bold right now, okay? I'm going to say, and this is going to be controversial, okay? But so many of my white friends, and I have lots of folks who I have worked for over the years as clients, who have worked for me, and we love each other, and they've been calling me, and they've been saying things like, I'm sorry for something racist I did 10 years ago, or how can we help you? Can you come and help diversify our staff? And I think it's wonderful. But my challenge is that you've got so much power. Remember the power that you used to hunt down O.J. Simpson when the criminal justice system let him go, and European Americans thought this man was guilty of killing his wife, and he should not have been left free. This is a travesty of justice. And they used all of their power, all of their political power, all of their legal power, all of their FBI power to hunt that man down, destroy his life, take all his money, and put him in jail. So I'm not going to debate whether he was guilty or not, or whether he's the first person to ever kill his wife, maybe. I'm talking about what you do when you think that something unjust has happened. I'm saying you have in your heart to do something. Use your power, your friends in high places, your legal power, your cultural power, your political power, and go after these cops who have fled justice, who have been declared not guilty by the criminal justice system, and do with them what you did to OJ. Make them pay. You can do it. That's the kind of support we need. And I'm asking you to please think hard and long about giving that kind of support. Chris, did I go too far?
Not really.
Thank you.
Not as far as slavery went. But why don't you give him 2 minutes? This young lady has, so for you that was telling you about the school that teaches Mandarin, that's her right there. She's got this program going. You should have your kids learn Mandarin.
If you have little ones and you want them to be multilingual, Americans need to be multilingual. You know, I did my time in the movement, and I said, now I want to be about humanity. Now I want to be about everybody coming together. And so, if Americans can learn Mandarin and French and Spanish and Arabic, we can begin to create relationships with other people in the world. So that's why I started my little multilingual nursery school in Morningside Gardens, Morningside Play Care, to make Americans multilingual.
Language transmits culture. So if you know the language, then you'll understand the culture. That's very important. My brother, you got something you want to say? We're doing a very organic, yeah, right, church. We're doing something very organic here. Come on and say a couple of words. Yeah, either one of you, both of you. Come on, man, do a little, you know.
We just arrived here.
Yeah.
We missed the rest.
Got a distance, right?
Yeah.
We are 2 Columbia postdoctoral students, and we are organizing a Columbia postdoc union of Columbia postdoc workers.
We're doing work right over there in the glass. The fishbowl.
And we want to show some solidarity. That's why we're here. Because we think workers should unite.
We're in the postdoctoral union. We're negotiating right now to get more protection for anybody who is suffering discrimination, harassment, coercion, exploitation. We're trying to negotiate with that Columbia University to get the rights, to get power, to get justice for anybody who is experiencing difficulty, who is being harassed, who is being discriminated against, and they're refusing it. And we're fighting. And we're fighting. We're going to use the power that we have. We do have some. And we're going to keep fighting it. We're going to fight it as long as we have to.
We stand with you. So you reach out to the Teamsters.
Okay.
When you get that picket line going, you reach out. We'll make sure you're all right.
We're in the slack.
All right.
And we, Columbia has a very shameful history of being historically a bad neighbor. And we are living here, we are working here in a fancy glass building which has been built by the money of some billionaires who don't pay enough taxes. And so we acknowledge this background, and we are complicit because we are part of that system. But so some people put signs there which says Black Lives Matters, and like we want to walk the talk, and we want to actually put action behind that. So tonight I'll go back and I will write on top of that, defund the police.
Defund the police, that's it.
Our bargaining committee for our union, we argued for about 5 days about whether we'll sign on to the petition to defund the police. And at the end of the 5 days, we had a lot of conversations that a lot of people are pretty uncomfortable having. And we said, defund the police, take them off of the campus, don't do surveillance for NYPD, don't maintain cops in student groups, get them the hell out. And we sign on to that.
That's right.
As well as 200 other academic groups, and now almost 5,000 people. Defund the police, get them off the campus.
All right. Power to the people.
want to make one connection, very important, another thing you can do, between the 40 acres and the mule and a movement that's been going on since. It's called the reparations movement. So the reparations movement is about getting that 40 acres and a mule. So when you hear people talking about reparations, please support it. Thank you.
All right. I just wanted to clear up my 40 acres in Midtown Manhattan. They can keep the mule. But that's a very important thing, because one of the things, if you people remember the Homestead Act, where as masses of Europeans were coming and they wanted them to go west, they gave them free land. And you could go out as fast as you could ride, you could stake out land for yourself. So they did that for Europeans coming to America, but the Africans that were here toiling got nothing. They didn't get the 40. We like the Native Americans. Broken promises and broken dreams. That's what we do. That's what they do. That's what the system does. We have to change that, because it's going to get, as capitalism continues to concentrate wealth in a much smaller and smaller space, it has to take it from you. And that's why you don't see pensions, not 401ks, defined benefit pensions. You don't see that anymore. You see yourself co-paying for your medical. Medical should be free. I don't need a submarine. I need a hospital. I need a doctor. I need medicine. At our age, right, my friend, right there. Because we're getting older, we need stuff now. But you're going to need it in the future, so we have to build this new society. Any other speakers? Anybody want to come out? Anybody want to talk? Going once, going twice. You want to say something there? No? Anybody? You? Yo? Power to the people. Raise your fist in the air. Power to the people. 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 And the power belongs to the people. Thank you all. Stay conscious, stay active, and don't forget, Malcolm X said it's the ballot or the bullet. Now, we didn't use the bullet on him a couple of days ago, burning some stuff down. Now we need to go to the ballot box. But remember what I said. Don't just vote for them because they're Democrat or Republican. Look at their policies. And if their policies do not fit with you, find a candidate that his or her policies fit with yours. There are no wasted votes that were cast. None. Thank you very much. Thank you all.